Alright, so for today's little activity, we are going to make a leather costrel. Now, what I've done here is I've used some paper to make my patterns, and I transferred that to some cardstock or cardboard or whatnot. Now, I've got two here, okay, and you're going to see why. I've got one for my outer boundary and one for my inner boundary, and that'll make sense in just a second, kind of where my stitching is going to go, if you will. Alright, so I use cardstock because, again, I'm going to have to trace around it, so I need something a little bit more sturdy than paper. Alright, so first things first, we got to get some leather going. Now, what I'm using here is just a side of leather and some painter's tape. And of course, I'm having to make room here. There's never enough room, right, guys? Okay, so a couple tools I've got around you'll see me use, and I'll try to name those as we go through. So first we want to get just the outer edge of our form kind of cut. So what I've done is I've taped this down using very small pieces of this painter's tape. You'll see why in just a second. You want to make sure that this does not move around because we want both of our sides of this costrel or water bottle to be as equal as possible. I don't want to trim off a lot of edges and have to fix it afterwards. It's better just to do it right out of the box. So take time now to make life easier later, right? All right, so now I'm using my awl to basically just kind of scratch right around the edge. And what you'll notice is that I'm skipping over where the tape is located. I'm gonna come back to that in just a second. So I want that tape to hold everything in place. And then when I'm done, then I'll come back over the tape and just actually kind of cut the tape with the awl as I scratch over it. Now that's going to fill in that line that I missed that first go around. So now on that leather, you'll see it'll be light, but you'll see kind of where that scratch is, where that edge is located. Okay, you want to make sure you got plenty of room to do all this, and of course maybe a beverage or two. Maybe not too many. Okay, so take your razor blade or whatever cutting tool you're using to cut your leather. I just use a standard utility knife. I kind of get a bulkier one so I can kind of handle it a little bit better. But some people are very proficient at other types of cutting utensils. So whatever your bag is, go for it. Now, when you're cutting, what I have found is that I would rather go nice and easy on top. Or rather that first kind of line, and then I'll come back and I'll really bear down. And what I'm trying to do here is to make sure that my cut is basically 90 degrees. It's very easy to kind of cut at an angle sometimes. I still do that. I am not a perfect leather worker, but I do the best I can. So you can sometimes go back after and trim it up if it does, but on something like this, you really want to try to get it done right the first time. Okay, so cut one and then cut two. Now, depending on what you want to do in terms of your patterns, if your patterns are not symmetrical, you definitely want to label which one is the front and which one's the back. Okay, so here all I'm looking at is what size of leather to use. I typically use kind of a 3 to 4 millimeter thickness for these. I've not done anything smaller in terms of thickness, so maybe it's fine, okay, to use something that small. I don't know. All right, so what I'm using here is, I think it's called like a wing divider. And what I use this for is to basically score where I'm going to put my seams. Now, if you're going to be doing two seams, you may actually have 2 or 3 different patterns instead of just the 2 that I have. So you might make a pattern for the outer edge, and then a pattern for the inner edge of where you're going to put your stitches. Okay, so you'll see here why I have the 2. So that was just my outer stitch. And now that I put that second template on there, I see where the mouth is going to be. Okay, and I just score that up to where the cork is going to be located. So again, I'm stitching up for the cork area, and then I'm going to stitch down and leave a little space so that I can punch a hole through that area that you see now, so that I can put some type of strap on that. So So then I take my awl back again to again scratch on that front side. I don't mind using the scratches right now because that's where your seam's going to go anyway. So you're just marking it. So don't freak out. But again, take your time. It's easy to kind of mess up sometimes. Okay, so I've marked where my seam's going to go on the front. Now I'm going to do it on the back. This is going to become important later on when I'm putting these two pieces together. Okay, so same as you saw me on the front, I'm going to do it on the back. Okay, so that gives me a good idea of where my seam is going to be located on both sides. Again, this is why it's important to make sure that both sides are the exact same shape, or at least very, very close, so that you know that these little seams will line up. Okay, so now I've got my little, it's an adjustable, you can use it for beveling, for scoring, it does all kinds of stuff. So I'm committed now, so I'm going to go in, and I'm only doing this on one side. I tend to only do it on one. I get nervous about it lining up, but what this is doing is basically it's a groover. It's making a groove inside that leather, and that's where my stitch is going to be located. You can do it on both sides, but if you're worried about missing as you punch through, don't. Okay, contact cement. Now, some of you out there are saying, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing putting that on there? Okay, look, here's the deal. I use contact cement to hold my edges down. If you don't want to use contact cement, don't. Yes, it has some pretty nasty stuff in it. I totally understand. However, after it dries, most of the stuff in there should have dissipated, okay? The second thing is that if you notice, I am not painting anywhere near where the water or mead or beer or whatever you plan on putting in this is located. I'm actually only going right around the edges. So where those seams are located should be right at the edge of where this contact cement is actually located. So as you can see here, I'm putting just a tiny bit right behind the line. I know it's tough to see on there, but right behind that line that I just scored. I try not to go over that at all. This is mainly just to hold things in place so that I can stitch it, okay? So I can get a really good tight stitch in there. All right, so again, if you've never used contact cement or any of those other ones, what you want to do is paint it on there, let it dry for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, because when you put the other side on, it's going to stick, okay? So again, I'm only painting up to that line. I'm not going over. That way, again, where that stitch is located is right at the edge of where that glue is. Now, this shouldn't be a very big deal because once I seal this with beeswax later on, the beeswax is actually protecting the whole interior part of this costrel. Okay, so finishing up here. All right, letting it dry, take a drink, maybe take another drink. Here's the tricky part. It's getting this stuff. See, like I told you, this is the worst part for me, because if you don't get these things lined up correctly, they're glued. I mean, that's it. That your whole stitch line on both sides are going to be off. So what is not working for me right now, what I should have done, is to flatten those two pieces out. You can see that there, because I had my leather rolled up, I should have flattened this out first. So what I try to do is I try to get one corner to one corner and then go for it, okay? That's the best advice I can give you. Again, just start slow, don't rush it, okay? And then what you want to make sure is that you apply some force around those edges where that glue is making contact. You can put binder clips on it and let it sit overnight. I tend to roll it out, hammer it down, all kinds of, you just want to make sure that there is as much pressure on that as possible. So I'm not going to wait on all that. So if you would like to do that, then by all means do so. Here, there's a few little spots because, again, I didn't have it lined up correctly. And when I cut it out, it wasn't quite as clean as I would wanted it. So I trimmed a few pieces, and then I just used a little sanding block just to kind of even everything up, okay? You can leave your edges as is if you want to go for kind of that kind of cool, look where it's finished but it's not, and all that. So everything gives it character. So don't sweat it if it's not perfect. Okay. All right. So here, all that I'm going to do is use my little where am I going? Oh yeah, my little diamond punch. There it is. My little diamond punch to basically put my holes in to stitch that up. Now, I've seen where some people will use a drill bit and basically drill holes all the way through. I would advise against that, simply because those drill bits can get pretty large, and those large bits basically make it too easy for water to go out. That's just more holes that you have to seal up, okay? I would recommend that you try to use some type of stitching on awl or anything that has somewhat of a smaller size tooth as it goes through. So as you can see, what I'm using here is a saddle soap. I use that just to help smooth the diamond teeth as they go in. It makes it a little bit easier to pull out. Now, whenever you're hammering these in, or you're using your awl, make sure you're doing it at an upright 90-degree position so that your stitches are even on the front and the back. It's very easy if you come in at the wrong angle. All right, so here I'm just going to bevel it. And that's pretty much all that I'm going to do to my edges. If you want to slick them down, by all means go for it. I've done some with a slicked edge. I've done some that all I did was bevel it and call it good. Okay, just adds a nice little touch to that edge. Whenever you're looking at it, you don't have to worry about kind of a 90-degree. Kind of makes it nice and smooth. Okay. And if you're a leather worker out there that you're just cringing because I don't know all the names of the tools to this, my bad. All I know is what they do, not what they're called. So here I am just kind of edging things up, making them nice and round and pretty. Again, if you see something, go sand it down, fix it, whatever. All right, so if you're going to stain it, now's the time. If you wanted to do any type of, design or embossing or carving, that needs to be done like as soon as you cut it out, before it's glued and all that stuff. That needs to be like step 2. All right, so here all I'm doing is making sure that I've covered the whole area in a nice stain. There's quite a few different stains out there. The only thing I advise is that after you stain it, you make sure that you let that stain soak in and dry for quite some time.